Bachmann have been innovating in recent years with the addition of passengers, DCC control lighting and factory weathering on their coaches. These recent coaches in the regional railways livery combine passengers with a weathered finish, so it's time to take a closer look. Hi, you're very welcome to today's review. So the first thing we're going to do is do a quick unboxing of the coaches. We'll then do a close-up view and 360 view, followed by a running session, and then we'll get into a summary, scoring and a final recommendation. Okay, let's get going. Okay, we're going to do the unboxing for these coaches. So just to kind of remind ourselves of kind of what we're looking at here. The first coach you're going to take a look at is this one, the 39056, which is a Mk1 second open in the regional railways livery, and this coming weathered and fitted with passengers. So we'll take a look at that one first. And then we've got two Mk2 coaches, again in the regional railways livery. So first one here is the 39364. Which is the second open in Mk2, again with passengers and weathering. And then the third coach, 39413, which is a break first, again in the regional livery and with passengers and with weathering. So I guess I had a couple of reasons for these. I'm always interested in seeing, you know, well equipped, well featured coaches with passengers, with weathering added, with lighting, etc. It's hard to get all of those in the one coach, unfortunately. But so let's put these two guys to the side for a minute, and I'll just put them over there. I'm just going to open this guy up and take him out. And the weight is pretty well as you'd expect from a Bachmann coach. It's probably in the region of about 160, 170 grams. I'll do a weigh-in later. Nice looking coach. So these are, I suppose, factory weathered. That's one of their kind of claims to fame. And as I will take a close-up look in a while, so you can kind of see the weathering effect on the door there, and the buffers. They're just regular buffers. They're not spring buffers. There's a bit of a metal grab rail there. The regional railways kind of logo there, and you can see the bogies with the kind of matted, weathered look to it. I suppose it's my first comment on the weathering is I suppose it's very factory weathered type look, quite even looking. Kind of a problem, I suppose, with some of the factory-based weathering can be a bit like this. Now it's not bad, and I think you could easily augment it with a bit of your own weathering. It isn't pristine, so it's a matte, more of a matte type finish, and probably the bogies are the more weathered looking aspect to it. So if you are really looking for heavy weathering, like a TMC type weathering, it's not quite that. It's more the factory type weathering, and some people like this and some people don't. I think the underbody actually, it probably is a better effect on the underbody than it is on the upper body. So that probably will be my first reaction to it. We'll do, a closer look up in a while, and again you can see it's pretty nice on the rear there. You can get a more graduated effect of the weathering. The roof is probably just more of a matte finish than a weathered finish. Now the other thing, I suppose, is the actual people, or the passengers, and hopefully you can see them in there. And there's a good variety. I think there's about a dozen in there, which is equivalent to the passenger pack that you get that Bachmann have, and I'll put the details of that in the description. You will typically pay, you know, anywhere between £11.50 to £13.50 for that set of passengers. So this effectively has those installed in the coach. So this coach does come quite well discounted at the moment. So I think I picked this one up for roughly £34, £35. So for a Mark 1 coach with some weathering and pre-installed passengers, that's a pretty good price. So I think you're getting some pretty good value for money there. We'll see how this coach runs, of course. Looks are one thing, but the running performance. But it is a Bachmann coach, and the Bachmann coaches traditionally do have a good running performance. So I would hope this will meet that. Okay, so far so good. This coach looks fine. It lives up to my expectations, and we'll go and take a look now at the other two. Okay, so just to save a bit of time, I've taken out the two Mark II coaches, and we'll look first at the open coach here. And again, it's the same effect, weathering effect, as we had on the Mark 1. And again, we will do close-ups of each of these afterwards. If anything, it looks a little bit better on the underbody. That's probably to do with a little bit more underbody detail on this coach. So it looks pretty good there. The upper body again is much the same as the Mark 1. And again, we've got the passengers in there, if you can get to see a few of those passengers with newspapers and various things. Same selection of passengers as the other coach, so it's basically the same 12 passengers repeated again. So you can see a bit at the end there, you can see the kind of weathering at the end. It's a nice looking coach. I don't have any criticism of it. I think it looks pretty good. The weathering it's okay. I'm fine with it. And as I say, I think the underbody is probably better than the main body of the coach from a weathering perspective. But in general, it just gives it that more used look, which just gives a bit more realism, and actually having real people in the coach. Trains don't tend to drive around without any people in them. So let's look at the brake coach. Again, there's some people in here. I'll actually have to flip it over the other side to see them. Again, some underbody detail there, as you can see, which is actually quite nice. And again, there's a good underbody weathering, I think, on this again. Same as the other coaches. And you've got our people in there as well. There's probably fewer people in this particular one because it's a brake coach. There's not as many people in there. It's good. The finish is good. I do like it. And it would be interesting to see how these run now, because that's it's going to be the determining factor. These coaches are a little bit more pricey than the Mark 1. I suppose Mark II coaches just command a higher price in the marketplace at the moment. So we will see how these fare out. I'm going to run them all together. I have a couple of extra Mark 1 coaches, so we'll actually have a 5-car rake of these, and we'll check that out in the running session. Okay, let's go to the next level where we're going to do a close-up view. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to take a closer look, just a side-on view. And the first coach we're looking at is the Mark 1. This is actually the lowest cost of the 3 coaches, and I think it is the best value. If you look at the underbody there, you can see that actually the weathering effect is quite good, and it actually brings out the detail in the underbody, which mightn't be as clear if this was just, say, a black plastic. The weathering is less as you go up, so the upper body of the coach is not as weathered, or doesn't appear so. It's not a gloss finish, as it were, a pristine finish. It's just kind of an off, kind of matte, more of a matte type finish. But I think it is quite effective. It's got on the low end in terms of weathering, I would say. And now we're looking at the Mark II open coach, and again similarly, good table detail here. There was good table detail in the Mark I coach as well. You can see the fitted passengers in there, and again the weathering on the underbody kind of brings out the detail, and I think it is very effective actually, and it looks well on the layout in particular. And again, there's nice interior detail there, as you can see, and these are good quality. They'd be typical quality Mark II coaches from Bachmann, which are usually a good standard. And again, you can see the kind of detail there, and there's weathering on the wheels as well. Now it's a little bit inconsistent, so you can see a bit of bright pieces on some of the wheels there, but there is weathering on those wheels. And again, the brake coach, will skip through this one pretty quickly. Just to talk about the passenger figures, they're actually configured in different positions. So if you had a rake of, say, 3 of the open coach, the passengers would be in different seats in each of those. And I think that's actually quite good and quite effective. And I see that I have 3 of the Mark I's in the rake, and you'll see it there. So now we're moving on to just doing a 360 view again to give you a kind of a slightly different view of these coaches. I do like a little bit of weathering on my coaches, and you can see the kind of end weathering detail there and on the buffers, and I think that's pretty good. And there's a sort of a matte finish on the roof. And again, you can see that the underbody there is being picked out quite nicely. The weathering is having a good effect there, and it kind of dampens down the kind of red springs there. It kind of just dampens them a little bit, putting the weathering on them. And I think it's quite effective. As I say, you can see the passengers in the windows there, and again, I think they really do work in these coaches. I do like to see passengers in the coaches. So I think that this Mk1 is really good, and say I have 3 of those in the rake now. I have 2 of the open Mk2s, and then I have 1 brake, and that's what we'll actually take a look at during the running session. I think that's a pretty good combination. So moving on to the open coach, the Mk2, and again getting a kind of a 360 view of this, and you get to see the end detail again. And again, I think this looks quite effective, the weathering there, and again on the buffers. And there's separately fitted grab rails there. So I think this does look pretty good, and is a good overall effect. Yeah, so these are nice coaches. Say they are pretty standard Mk2 stock from Bachmann, which means there is a good quality here, and there's a reasonable level of weight. These coaches are actually a little bit lighter than the Mk1, interestingly enough. The Mk1 weighs in at 154 grams, where these are 144, 145 for the brake, which is 10 grams lighter. I'm not quite sure the reason for that, but that is the case. So just finishing up there, and again giving a look at the brake coach. And again, there's different underbody detail here, and again the weathering does a good job at kind of bringing out that detail and making it a bit clearer. And I think overall it is very effective. So these are good-looking coaches. I think they do work, and I think they do particularly look well on the layout. And we're going to go to that next now, and actually as part of the running session we'll take a look at the rake on an actual layout. Okay, so we'll just wrap up this piece, and hopefully this gave you a good view of what these coaches actually do look like. And as I say, there's nothing like seeing them actually running as well, so we'll get into that now. So during the running session, we're going to be running, as I say, a rake of 6 coaches. We're running with 3 Mk1s, 2 Mk2 opens, and the brake coach, Mk2 brake at the very end. And so this gives us a good kind of side-on view of this kind of mixed rake, I suppose. And again, I think the passenger figures there look pretty good. I think they do the job. We'll go at a relatively slow speed, and then we'll go up to the upper end of the speed scale for the last piece of the session. And these are good running coaches, and they are Bachmann coaches. The Bachmann Mk2s and Mk1s, certainly the most recent ones, have always been very reliable and don't have any running problems, and tend to be very smooth on the track, and tend to sit well on the track as well. They don't, because of the extra weight on them, they don't move around too much, and they sit well, and they have a good feel and good look to them as a result. And they're pretty closely coupled there, so even without using the close coupling bar, these are just using the standard couplers. They are pretty tight. Again, that makes it look a little bit better as well in running. And so we'll go through another pass of the station here. I do have a separate review of the Class 37 in the Regional Railways livery, so you'll see that separately. And I do have a full running session that goes through all the different speed levels and without any commentary, and with the full sound volume. I'm running with the sound volume down here, obviously, so that you can hear me. So good running session overall. I think I was pretty pleased. We're going to crank this now up to the higher speed and give it a quick run around. And these coaches could easily run, prototypically I think in this running session we're only going to about 80 miles an hour. We could easily run, these coaches could easily run faster than that. They are very solid coaches, as I said, and don't have any problems over your points and diamonds, etc. And there's no gauge issues with them. They're a good build quality and a good effective coach. And even I know when I was doing this running session and doing some runs through it, even when I brake very quickly, some coaches don't react well to that, and I never have a problem with the Bachmann coaches with regard to that. I never get any kind of derailment effects when I do some fast braking on the locomotive. And obviously I'm not going to do that here, and we're slowing down gradually here for the sake of the running session. I think they look very effective on the layout there, and again the underbody in particular I think fits very well. And when we look at some of the still photographs later on, I think you'll see that as well. It really comes out quite well. So a very satisfactory running session, so it's time to get into the scoring and the summary. So now we get into the summary. So we've been looking at the Regional Railways livery. These are Mk2 coaches from Bachmann. It's factory weathering and passengers. The three coaches in the range, the Mk1 TSO, a Mk2A TSO and a Mk2A BFK. The features across all the coaches are standard in pockets, tension lock couplers, fitted passenger figures. Now there's 12 of these on the open coaches and 6 on the brake, which kind of makes sense, I guess. As a minimal detailing kit and a close coupling bar. And the unpackaged weight is 152 grams for the Mk1, 144 for the Mk2, and 145 for the BFK. And the typical selling price does vary quite a bit. These have been discounted by a number of vendors. The Mk1 is in the range of 35 to 45, and the Mk2 would be in the range of 45 to 65. So obviously getting quite expensive at the upper end there. So I picked up all of these at towards the lower end of that range from Kernow actually. So I was pretty pleased with that. And as I said, the Mk1 at £35 for a good quality Bachmann Mk1 coach with 12 passenger figures, which themselves are worth the equivalent of about 12 to 14 pounds themselves. That's pretty good value, and then with the added weathering as well. I think when you get to the Mk2, it's kind of evens out a bit, and obviously you wouldn't want to be paying the £65 at the upper end. So in summary, or in the scoring side, we've got the running performance I'm putting as a 5-star. These are very good running coaches, not a whisper of a problem, very smooth running, and I really just have to give them a 5-star as a result. Appearance and detail I'm giving a 4.5-star. I think overall they're quite effective. There's good rendering of the livery. The weathering I think works to a degree. I don't think it's the best weathering, so this is not a 5-star. But I think in general it does do the job, and certainly for me I thought it does enough. And obviously you could add your own additional weathering if you wanted to on top. So 4.5-star I think is a very good score there. Extras and variants 3.5-star, and this is coming down to the fact that you've got that weathering and you've got the passengers installed, etc. There are only 3 coaches in the range, however, so that's a little bit of a limiter. So 3.5-star there. And then build quality and packaging, I think a 4.5-star in really on this one. A little bit of some of the weathering chipped off the wheels, etc. So, but I think overall these are good quality. Bachmann coaches are usually very good quality, and I think these are good quality. They last long, and they tend to have good resale value. Price value I'm giving 4-star, and that's at the discounted prices, and I would say a 4.5-star for the Mk1, and maybe a 3.5-star for the Mk2s. Obviously, if you go to the upper end of the scale, that does drop, and you'd be talking about a 2.5 to 3-star if you were paying the upper end of the pricing range. And overall, I think a 4.5-star and a highly recommended rating. I do like these coaches. I think they work very well on the layout. They match well with the Regional Railways Class 37, the weathered version, which I'll talk about in another video. And overall, I think they give a very nice effect. They are well detailed. I think the passengers work well, and that mixed random distribution of passengers across the coaches, I think again is very effective. So if you've got a rake of coaches, they may be all the same coach, but they're going to have a different configuration of passengers in each one of them, and I think that works very well. And I say that the only thing that's missing really is some lighting. People may or may not like the weathering aspect of them, but I think overall I think they hit the mark, and I think Bachmann are to be commended for giving fully featured coaches like these. You know, for people who do like to have passengers in their coaches, they do like to have weathering. It's very nice to be able to buy this off the shelf and not have to spend the time adding them yourself. So highly recommended, and I think these are well worth taking a look at. So thanks for joining today's video. I'm going to cover the locomotive in a separate video, as I said, and we'll hopefully see you on the next one or one of the videos after that. Okay, thanks for joining today, and in the meantime, happy modeling.